God of all grace. In 2 Kings chapter 4 verse 6 says, when the vessels were full, she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said to her, there is not another. Then the oil stopped flowing. I have a question for you. What will you do if you receive a bad diagnosis, a terminal cancer, or a loss of loved ones? In 2 Kings chapter 4, Elijah was approached by a widow of a man who was reported to be righteous but died with significant debts. The widow had two sons who were at risk of becoming slaves in order to pay off the debts of their father. This meek widow was desperate and bankrupt. But Elijah had a plan. He told her to take an inventory of her own resources, reach out to her neighbors for help, then follow his instructions. And lo and behold, in a miraculous display of provisions, God used the widow's small amount of oil to fill all the jars she collected from her neighbor. Elijah told her, sell all the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live in what is left. What can we learn from this story? We can learn the response from Elijah. Number one is Elijah models a response that is full of wisdom and compassion when he asks, how can I help you? You see, if you have a friend or loved ones in crisis, one of the best places to start by asking them what they need. In Mark chapter 10, verse 51 to 52, Jesus asks, what do you want me to do for you? The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, Jesus said, your faith has healed you. Immediately, he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. Another thing that we can learn from this story is Elijah goes on and asks, what do you have? In tragedy and grief, it's easy to only seek the lack around us. That's when we need a community to rally alongside to remind us of what God has already given us. It's our role to spur on our faith, trusting that God can multiply what we have in time of our needs. In Matthew chapter 17, verse 20 says, Jesus said, for if you have faith even as small as a tiny mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move, and it will move. And another thing that we can learn from this is Elijah discovered the widow did have something to offer the Lord. It was a small vial of valuable olive oil. He instructed her to gather empty containers of all kinds, bring them to her house, close the door, and begin pouring out this oil. She was obedient. At her step of faith, the trusted God could use her little resulted in abundant provisions for her and her sons. You see, God not only multiplied the oil so she could have enough to pay off her debts, He gave her enough to sustain her and her sons for the rest of their lives. Abundant grace poured out on His righteous ones indeed. To close, God's grace is always sufficient. The widow was able to pay off her debts, just like what Paul declares in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 8, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness.